The rain had that kind of rhythm that made the world slow down. Not a thunderous storm, not a dramatic downpour, just a steady, soaking drizzle that blurred outlines and softened noise. It was the kind of rain that made most people rush indoors, tuck under umbrellas, or at least pause their day until the sky changed its mind. But not her. Elon Musk didn't notice her at first. He was walking briskly through a quiet neighborhood in upstate New York, hood up, hands in pockets, attempting, unsuccessfully, to escape a life that rarely gave him a moment alone. No security detail today. No assistants trailing behind. Just a weekend away from boardrooms and algorithms, a rare decision to stay off-grid and see the world without filter. And then he saw her. At the corner of a nearly empty intersection, where a small wooden stand leaned crookedly against a pole, stood a young girl, maybe 8, maybe 9, with tangled hair under a red knit cap, soaked jeans clinging to her shins, and a handwritten sign that read, "Lemonade, 50 cents." He stopped walking. The absurdity of it struck him immediately. Who in their right mind sold lemonade in the middle of a cold, gray, rainy afternoon? But there she was, unbothered, serious, sitting on an overturned milk crate behind a plastic cooler, elbows on her knees, chin tucked low, as if she had done this 100 times. Elon crossed the street slowly. She didn't flinch, didn't look up, just sat there in the kind of silence that didn't seem afraid of company. Only when his shadow stretched across her crate did she raise her head, and for a moment, their eyes locked. She had the kind of gaze that didn't belong to someone so young. Eyes that had already seen the parts of life that shouldn't be seen until much later. Not sadness exactly, more like a steady, exhausted kind of courage. He cleared his throat. "Lemonade, huh?" She nodded once. 50 cents. Elon smirked. "In the rain." She glanced up at the sky. Rain doesn't change thirst. That answer, so direct, so unexpected, it hit him harder than he wanted to admit. He reached for his wallet, dug through a soggy billfold, and pulled out a 20. She didn't smile, just blinked at it. "Do you have change?" he asked. She looked at him, then back at the cooler, opened it carefully, and poured a pale yellow liquid into a paper cup. She handed it to him with both hands, then slipped a few coins and a crumpled 5 into his palm. He took a sip. It was cold, a little too tart. "Perfect. You made this?" he asked. She nodded again. "What's your name?" "June." He smiled. "Like the month?" "No, like the middle name," she replied. "It's my mom's middle name." She said it sounded like hope. He stared at her, the cup in his hand suddenly feeling heavy. "Where's your mom now?" June's eyes darted down. "She's resting." Elon didn't push. They sat in silence for a while, the rain dripping off the brim of his jacket, her cap starting to sag at the edges. People passed occasionally, staring at him without recognizing him, a strange gift he rarely received anymore. He watched her adjust the sign that kept drooping, watched her carefully wipe down the surface of the stand, as if the rain hadn't already cleaned it 100 times. She wasn't playing business, she was surviving it. There was no performance, no pretend. "Do you always sell lemonade here?" he asked. "When it rains?" He tilted his head. "Shouldn't you do that when it's sunny?" She shook her head. "No one needs lemonade on sunny days. They have ice cream, or pools, or friends. But when it rains, people feel alone. Lemonade helps." That's when it hit him. She wasn't selling a drink. She was offering a moment, a tiny act of comfort in a world that sometimes forgot how to give it. He sat down next to her on the spare crate. She didn't tell him to leave. She didn't ask him why. He didn't offer an explanation. And for the next 20 minutes, they sat there together in the rain, saying almost nothing, letting the city pass them by like ghosts. And that's where everything began. Not in a lab, not in a boardroom, but at a weather-worn lemonade stand under a steel gray sky, beside a little girl who knew that pain didn't always come in thunder. Sometimes it came in drizzle. And still, she showed up. The rain continued its gentle cadence, turning the sidewalk into a glistening mirror of the overcast sky. June didn't seem to notice the chill settling in. Her hands remained steady as she poured another cup of lemonade, this time for a woman in scrubs who barely said a word. The woman dropped $2 into the jar without waiting for change and walked off under a clear umbrella, her eyes distant heavy. "She comes every Saturday," June murmured, "even when it doesn't rain. But she only buys on rainy days." Elon glanced at her, intrigued. "Why do you think that is?" June shrugged, her fingers tracing the rim of an empty cup. "Maybe rainy days are when we need small kindnesses the most." He watched the steam rise faintly from his own breath. There was a truth in her that wasn't precocious, it was earned. He could feel it, like her soul had lived an extra decade that her body hadn't caught up to. For a long time, Elon had viewed emotion through the lens of logic, data patterns, human psychology, neural triggers. But this girl, she didn't speak in theories. She spoke in lived moments, in human weight. And the more he listened, the more he realized how few of those moments he truly let into his own life. "You said your mom's resting," he said gently. "Is she at home?" June nodded. "Sort of. She's at the place with all the beeping machines." His chest tightened. "The hospital?" "Yeah, but not the get better part. The other part, where you wait." He didn't say anything for a moment, just let her words settle. "I used to sit with her every day, but then the nurses said she needed quiet days. That means I'm not allowed in unless someone comes with me." She paused, fiddling with her sleeve. "So when it rains, I come here. To keep yourself busy. To be close," she said, and tapped her chest once. "Right here. When I help someone else feel better, I feel like she can feel it too, even if she's sleeping." That was when Elon felt it. A crack in the concrete wall. He kept around his own heart. Not just empathy, not just sorrow, but recognition. Because long before the rockets, before the fame, before the relentless pursuit of the future, he too had known what it meant to be a child trying to make sense of pain with no clear rules. "I used to sell stuff too," he said, surprising himself. June raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, like what?" "Eliminator spray," he said, chuckling. "Big bottle, big label. Said it could eliminate anything. Bugs, odors, homework, fear." She smirked. "Did it work?" "No, but I believed it did. I think I needed to." For the first time since they'd met, she laughed, a small, shy sound that seemed to part the clouds for just a second. A gust of wind knocked the lemonade sign halfway over. Elon reached for it, but June got there first. She straightened it with quiet precision, pressing down each corner like she was tucking in a blanket. That's when he noticed the writing beneath the price. In tiny blue ink, barely visible unless you looked. "Rain is just sky tears. Lemonade is how we hug back." He blinked. It wasn't marketing. It was a mantra. "You wrote that." June looked up at him, unsure. "It's dumb, right?" He shook his head slowly. "No, it's exactly right." The rain softened to a mist. Cars hummed by, and still they sat there. Strangers passing didn't stop. A few smiled. Most didn't. But for those brief moments when someone did pause, when someone handed over a crumpled dollar in exchange for a paper cup of something sweet and sour, they didn't just receive a drink. They received presence. That night, long after the clouds had emptied themselves and the sky had bruised into purple dusk, Elon returned to his rented cabin. He couldn't shake her voice. That steadiness, that grace, that quiet resilience. He opened his laptop, not to work but to write. He didn't even know who he was writing to. He just typed, "Today I met a girl who sells lemonade in the rain. She reminded me that the world doesn't need saving, it needs noticing." Before we continue, if this story is already tugging at something inside you, not the plot, but the feeling, we'd love for you to be part of this journey with us. Hit subscribe if you want more stories like this, quiet, human, meaningful. And let us know in the comments. What's something small that once meant everything to you? A memory, a gesture, a moment like lemonade in the rain. We read them all. We remember with you. Now let's get back to our story. The next morning, The rain was gone, but the sidewalk still held its memory. Puddles shimmered under a pale sun, leaves clung damp to curbs, and the air carried that earthy scent that only appears after something has wept long enough to be emptied. Elon woke early, unable to sleep. The image of June adjusting her lemonade sign kept replaying in his mind like a film loop he couldn't turn off. He didn't have meetings. He didn't have an agenda. So he walked back to that same corner, past the bakery with its cracked awning, past the newsstand no one really used anymore, past the spot where he once might have kept walking. She was there, but something was different. No stand, no milk crate, no cooler. Just June, sitting cross-legged on the damp sidewalk, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes pointed downward. He approached slowly. No lemonade today. She didn't look up. It's not raining. Elon stopped. So no one's thirsty. No one stops when the sun is out, she said flatly. They don't need lemonade. They need direction, or schedules, or sunglasses. There was no bitterness in her voice. Just fact. He crouched beside her. But you're still here. She finally looked at him, her eyes a little darker than yesterday. I said I come when it rains, but I didn't say it has to be raining outside. That hit him, somewhere behind his ribs. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled umbrella, bright yellow, decorated with faded cartoon lemons. She opened it and held it above them both, even though the sky was clear. Elon glanced up. We're sitting under an umbrella in full sunlight. June nodded. Sometimes that's the best time to open one. A woman pushing a stroller passed by and smiled politely. A man in running gear jogged past, earbuds in, unaware of the quiet gravity unfolding beneath the lemon umbrella. What do you see when you look at people walking by? Elon asked her. June turned her head slowly, eyes scanning the passers-by. Mostly rush, a little loneliness, sometimes noise that doesn't come from their mouths. Elon blinked. Noise. She nodded, like when people pretend they're okay, but their eyes are loud. He couldn't stop looking at her. And what do my eyes sound like? She studied him without flinching, like you used to be full of color, and then you got really smart and forgot which color meant home. He exhaled slowly. You're not a kid. June shrugged. I am, just not in the way most people think. A silence settled again. They sat under that lemon umbrella for a long time. The world passed, and neither of them moved. Not because they had nowhere else to be, but because there was something sacred in the stillness they had made. Eventually, Elon reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small notepad, something analog, something rare for him. He wrote something down, then tore off the page and handed it to her. She read it, then smiled, really smiled for the first time. What is this? She asked. He stood. A promise. The paper read, next time it rains, I bring the lemonade. She folded it and tucked it into her coat pocket like a treasure. As he walked away, she called after him, not loudly, but enough for him to hear over the shuffle of the street. Hey. He turned. Your eyes are a little quieter today. And that was the moment he knew. He wasn't just meeting a girl at a lemonade stand. He was being seen. It had been 5 days since Elon last saw June. He wasn't sure why the gap bothered him. After all, his life was defined by absences, missed calls, empty rooms, moments he couldn't pause long enough to feel. But now, every morning that didn't begin with her quiet smirk beneath that yellow umbrella felt just a bit out of tune. On the 6th day, it rained. Not hard, but steadily, just enough to bring out the scent of wet stone and earthworms, the city's strange way of breathing through its pores. Elon pulled his coat tighter and returned to the corner. He didn't even need to think about it anymore. His body already knew the way. She was there. So was the stand. But this time, something had changed. Instead of 1 crate, there were 3. The sign had been redrawn with thicker ink, laminated beneath a sheet of clear plastic. A small table had been added, covered in paper cups and a tin donation box labeled, for moms who are waiting too. There were 2 other kids with her, both younger, both shy, pouring lemonade and handing it off with small, nervous smiles. June managed the setup like a captain steering a tiny ship through soft fog. When she saw Elon, she didn't wave, just tilted her head, as if to say, "You came back. I knew you would." He stepped beneath the umbrella she had hung from a bent street sign and accepted a cup wordlessly. The lemonade tasted better, softer, still tart but warmer somehow. "You expanded," he said. June nodded. "People kept asking if they could help, so I let them." He smiled. "Good choice." "They don't stay long," she said, watching the younger girl pour with shaky hands. "Just a few hours. But sometimes that's all we need. A few hours where we don't feel like ghosts." Elon glanced at the tin. "What's this?" June didn't answer right away. Then, "Last week, one of the nurses said my mom might not wake up, that her body is tired of fighting." I wanted to scream, but I remembered something. He leaned in. "She used to say, 'Even if I can't hold you, I want the world to.' So now I'm helping it try." His throat tightened. Before he could respond, a woman approached, a stranger, mid-40s, rain in her lashes, holding a half-broken umbrella, and wearing the kind of expression that only people holding invisible things wear. She looked at June. "I heard about this place. My sister said you pour memories." June handed her a cup. "Oui pour hope. It just tastes like lemons." The woman's lip quivered as she dropped a few bills into the tin, took a sip, and sat down beside the stand. She didn't speak again. She didn't need to. The rain made its music. People began to gather, not in crowds but in moments. One by one, a man with a dog and sad eyes, a teacher who hadn't taught in months, a boy holding a soaked drawing of his brother. They didn't come for the lemonade. They came to feel less invisible. And Elon, for all his brilliance, for all his galaxies and groundbreaking ideas, realized something he'd forgotten. Connection doesn't require brilliance. It requires presence. June wasn't just running a stand. She was creating a space, a pocket in time, where people could put down what they were carrying, just for a moment. And in return, receive something tart, something simple, something real. Later that day, Elon returned to the cabin and opened his journal. He wrote, "There's no scale for stillness, no valuation for presence. But today, I watched a girl with a plastic cooler teach a city how to breathe. And I remembered what it feels like to be seen." The rain had stopped, but the umbrella stayed open. It was June's rule now. If someone might still be hurting, the stand stayed up, rain or not. Elon returned 3 days later and found her seated on the milk crate, no longer damp from weather, but just as rooted. Her eyes lit up when she saw him, though she didn't say a word. She simply nudged a cup toward him, already poured. It wasn't a transaction. It was a ritual. The stand had changed again. Now there was a notebook clipped to the front of the table, slightly warped by moisture. On it, handwritten instructions. Write the name of someone you miss. The cup is for them too. The pages were full. Scribbled names, first names, full names, some followed by hearts. Others just underlined. One simply said, "Mom, I never said thank you." Elon flipped through the pages in silence. "You did this." June nodded. Sometimes it helps if they're written down, like the sky reads it too. Elon sat beside her, glancing toward the street. People came and went. Some left coins, others notes. A few just paused, hands in pockets, blinking fast. "They don't come for the lemonade," Elon said aloud. June didn't flinch. They never did. An older man approached the table with a slow gait and a limp that suggested years of pain he no longer apologized for. He read the sign, then looked at Elon and June. "Can I write more than one name?" June nodded once. He wrote 6, and when he walked away, he didn't take a cup. Just folded the edge of the page, like it meant something sacred. A woman in her 20s came next. No umbrella, no jacket, just raw eyes and trembling hands. She didn't say anything, but Elon saw her lips move silently after she read the notebook. June poured her a cup without being asked. The woman took it, sipped, and whispered, "I haven't felt safe in weeks." Elon exhaled. This wasn't a stand. It was a confessional, a ceremony of the everyday, a place where people handed over a few cents for the right to stop pretending. He leaned toward June. Do you ever get tired of carrying everyone's sadness? She shook her head. It's not mine to carry. I just keep it company. That line, he'd remember it forever. He looked down at the paper cup in his hands, watched the sunlight flicker through it. What if this was everywhere? He asked suddenly. What if every city had one of these? Not branded, not marketed, just spaces to be honest. June turned to him. You don't need a big thing to make a big feeling. You just need one person who's not afraid to sit in the rain. That night, Elon returned to the cabin. He didn't open his laptop. He opened a new page in his journal and wrote, what if kindness was infrastructure? What if presence was the foundation? If she can build it with paper cups, what excuse do the rest of us have? It didn't start with a news article. There was no viral video, no tweet with 1 million likes. The story of June's lemonade stand didn't explode. It drifted, like a scent caught in the folds of a scarf, like the trace of laughter after someone leaves a room. It started when a woman who had once lost everything wrote about the stand on a grief support forum. There's a little girl in upstate New York who sells lemonade in the rain, and somehow I left feeling lighter than I've felt in years. Then came the local photographer whose camera had gathered dust since his son's accident. He walked by on a whim, took one photo, and posted it with a single line. Sometimes the smallest shelters keep the fiercest storms out. That photo, June beneath her yellow umbrella, holding a cup with both hands, eyes calm like a lighthouse, circulated not through algorithms, but through ache, through inboxes and quiet shares, through late-night texts that said, "This reminded me of you." And so the world found her, not as a spectacle, but as a permission slip to feel again. Elon returned the following weekend. This time, the stand was surrounded by umbrellas that didn't match. Some hung from trees. Others were simply open, staked into the ground like offerings. There was no sign explaining them, no instructions, just colors and shapes and sizes, creating a dome of soft shelter over a patch of wet sidewalk. June was there, of course. She always was when it rained. When she saw him, she didn't speak. She simply handed him a folded piece of paper. Inside was a message. I didn't make the umbrellas. They just started appearing. He looked around, heart caught somewhere between awe and disbelief. There were children huddled beneath them, couples holding hands, a woman in a wheelchair, her cup of lemonade balanced carefully on her lap, a man who had clearly walked there from across town, soaked to the bone, holding a photograph in a plastic bag. Elon sat beside her. Do you think they know who you are? She smiled faintly. I think they know who they are when they're here. That was the magic. The stand didn't give people something new. It returned something they'd forgotten they had. That day, a young journalist arrived. Not from a major outlet, just a freelancer chasing warmth in a world addicted to outrage. She asked if she could write about the stand. June looked up. Only if you don't call it amazing. The journalist blinked. Why not? Because it's not amazing, June said softly. It's ordinary, and that's why it matters. The article was published with the title, A Cup, a Name, and the Rain. And the subtitle read, What happens when we stop running from the weather and start sharing it? The piece traveled the world, not like wildfire, but like rainfall. Quiet, slow, everywhere. The skies had cleared again. A full week of sunshine stretched across the forecast. The kind of weather people call perfect, warm breeze, blue dome overhead, clean sidewalks. But Elon noticed something strange. People still came. Even with no clouds in sight, even with no reason to need shelter or an excuse to slow down, they found their way to June's corner. Some brought umbrellas and opened them anyway. Others simply stood near the old lemonade stand and waited. Not for drinks, for something else. One morning, a man in a pressed suit arrived. He looked like someone who didn't do detours, sharp jaw, polished shoes, every part of him screaming schedule. But he just stood in front of the table, staring at the notebook. June watched him, silent. After 5 minutes, he pulled a pen from his breast pocket, wrote something in the notebook, and dropped his cufflink beside it. Then he turned to June and said, "I never said goodbye." She didn't ask to whom. She just poured a cup and handed it to him. He took it, closed his eyes, and whispered, "Thank you for being here," and walked away. Later that day, a school bus pulled up to the corner. A group of 4th graders spilled out, all carrying lemon yellow construction paper hearts. A young teacher led them forward, waving gently at June, who blinked in disbelief. The teacher knelt down beside her. "I hope this is okay. We read the article in class. The kids wanted to make something." Each child stepped forward one by one and handed June a paper heart. Some had names, others had drawings. One simply said in large, careful letters, "My mom cried and I didn't know what to do. Thank you for the idea." June held the stack in her lap, not moving for a long time. Elon watched it all unfold from a distance. He didn't want to interrupt, didn't want to disrupt the delicate energy that pulsed around her like a halo. So he stayed by the tree across the street, notebook in hand, writing. Later that night, he reread something June had told him on the very first day. Rain doesn't change thirst. He thought about that now, about how people can walk through perfect weather and still be soaking wet on the inside. How pain doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just quiet, long, and waiting. And maybe that's what June understood before the rest of them. That thirst isn't always about water. Sometimes it's about being seen through the fog we carry. Sometimes it's about someone saying, "I'll wait with you even if it's dry." There were always some who didn't write in the notebook, didn't take a cup, didn't leave a name. They just came, stood, waited, then went. And June never stopped them. She told Elon once, "Some people aren't ready to speak, but they still deserve to be heard." And somehow, the silence around her stand knew how to listen. That day it rained again, not a drizzle, but a full, soaking downpour. Umbrellas bloomed like flowers around the neighborhood. But even without one, June sat in her usual spot, completely still. The stand had been pulled back a few feet under an awning now supported by the help of neighbors. A nearby shop had even placed out a plastic mat so people wouldn't slip. She hadn't asked for any of it. People just knew. Elon arrived soaked, his jacket stuck to his shoulders. June handed him a towel with no words. It felt like a ceremony. They sat under the rain for a while, watching people come and go. An elderly man stood nearby for a full 10 minutes, eyes closed, hands trembling. He didn't look at anyone, but before leaving, he reached into his pocket and placed a small bronze locket on the table. Then he walked away without a word. June didn't touch it, didn't ask who it was for. She simply left it there beside the cup he never took. Later, a teenager with scars on his wrists came. His hoodie soaked, his shoulders stiff. He didn't say a word, just stood in the rain until his face was indistinguishable from the sky around him. June poured him a cup anyway, and he drank it slowly, staring into the middle distance. Before leaving, he wrote in the notebook, "I'm still here. I didn't think I would be. Thank you." Elon swallowed hard reading it. He couldn't bring himself to speak. That evening, back in the cabin, Elon lit the fire for no reason other than to sit and stare into it. The rain continued outside, soft against the glass. He opened a notebook and began to write letters, not emails, not speeches. Letters. One to a childhood friend he'd lost touch with, one to his mother, one to himself, and then one to June. He didn't intend to give it to her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But he needed to put it down. "You taught me that stillness isn't weakness. That waiting beside someone is sometimes braver than moving forward alone. That not all voices need volume to change the world. Some just need rain." That week, more people came. A man who hadn't spoken since his brother died. A woman who used to sing but had forgotten the lyrics of her own name. A child who brought a photo torn in half and placed it on the corner of the stand like an offering. No one asked why they came, but everyone understood. They were the ones who didn't speak, and June gave them back their place in the story. By now, the stand was no longer just a corner. It was a place people brought their questions, They're unfinished stories. Their names written on napkins, photographs curled at the edges, poems folded into fourths. It had become a crossroads for the fragile and the brave. And more, Elon wasn't the only one who noticed. He returned one afternoon under heavy clouds. Rain hadn't started, but the air was full of that dense, electric hush. As he approached, he saw something new, a small wooden planter box next to the stand. Inside it, green shoots were poking through dark soil, young, fragile things reaching upward like they knew something better was coming. "Did you plant these?" he asked June. She was focused on folding napkins into neat squares. "No." The lady with the sad eyes and the blue scarf did. She said the corner needed something that grows. Elon knelt beside the box. He ran a hand over the soft leaves. They weren't labeled, but he didn't need to know what they were. They were alive. More boxes had been added nearby. One had rosemary. Another had small white flowers someone said were called forget-me-nots. There was no plan, just people giving what they had. Little pieces of meaning, left behind without fanfare. That day, something unexpected happened. A city worker in an orange vest arrived. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the corner, checking a laminated clipboard, clearly unsure if he should interrupt. After a moment, he stepped forward, removed his cap, and said, "I was told this was an unlicensed sidewalk setup. I'm supposed to issue a citation." June looked up, calm. Elon stepped closer, about to speak, when the worker held up his hand. "But," he said, voice softer now, "my wife came here last week. She wrote our daughter's name in the notebook. She cried when she got home. The good kind. So I'm going to say, I didn't find anything worth citing." He left a 20 in the tin and walked away. June didn't even flinch. Later that evening, a group of teenagers arrived, hoodies, backpacks, noise. Elon stiffened at first, unsure if they came to cause trouble. But then he noticed one of them holding a lemon cake, another carrying paper cups. They weren't mocking. They were participating. "We thought maybe Friday nights could be special," one of them said. "People don't talk much at night." June smiled. "Okay, but you have to bring real lemons next time." That night, as the sky broke open and rain began to fall, June stood under her now iconic yellow umbrella, surrounded by teenagers handing out lemon cake, neighbors tending plants, and strangers writing names by lantern light. And in that moment, Elon realized something stunning. This wasn't a movement. This was a garden. Not the kind you grow from seed. The kind that grows when someone decides not to walk away. And he knew now, he hadn't discovered June. She wasn't a phenomenon to be amplified. She was a reminder, a mirror, a quiet insistence that small things, if tended gently, could change the weather inside people. That night, he wrote in his notebook, "The world doesn't need another blueprint. It needs a bench, a cup, a name whispered in the rain. This isn't disruption. It's restoration." The sky was dry again. The rain, for once, had stopped for more than a day. And yet Elon found himself drawn back to that corner, like gravity was pulling him through something only his heart understood. The umbrellas were still there, though some had collapsed in the sun. The planter boxes were fuller now. Someone had added stones with painted names beside the forget-me-nots. And the notebook, the same old weather-warped notebook, was now on its third volume. June was there as always. But this time, when she saw Elon, she looked different. Not tired, not sad, just still. He sat beside her, neither of them speaking for a while. There was a kind of reverence between them now, as if they both knew they were no longer just witnesses to this place. They were part of it. Finally, Elon pulled something from his pocket. A letter. Folded, worn, handwritten. He held it for a long moment before passing it to her. "You don't have to read it out loud," he said quietly, "or even read it now. I just thought maybe someone should." June took it gently like it was a bird. Her hands didn't tremble. She nodded once and tucked it beneath the notebook without saying a word. Then she said, "Do you want to write a name today?" Elon looked toward the page, already crowded with ink. "I think I want to write a word instead." She passed him the pen. He wrote, "Stay." That night, as the light began to fade and the city slowed into evening hush, Elon stood across the street again, this time not to watch, but to feel. Something was stirring in him, a kind of ache he hadn't touched in years. Not loneliness, not grief, but longing. For the version of himself that had been quieted beneath layers of strategy, expectations, control. For the boy who used to build not because he had to, but because he wondered what might happen. He remembered the last time he wrote a letter to someone he never sent. It was after his first real failure. Not a product, but a promise to himself. The letter said, "I hope you come back one day. I miss how much you used to feel things." And maybe that's what June had given him back. Not answers, not solutions, just permission to feel things again. To remember the things he used to write in the margins of notebooks before the world expected him to know everything. Back at the stand, June sat with the notebook open, Elon's letter resting beside it. She reached for a small pebble and placed it on top to keep it from blowing away. Then, for the first time in days, she wrote something too. A name, and beside it one word, braver. The sky held a pale gray calm, the kind that couldn't decide if it wanted to cry or rest. There was no real rain, just the occasional mist that lingered like a breath on the air. Elon arrived earlier than usual. He didn't bring a notebook. He didn't bring questions. Just a folding chair and a quiet heart. The moment he turned the corner, he saw them. Not just new faces, but familiar ones. Faces that had been there before. Faces that had once looked broken and silent, now different, worn still, but warmer. A woman with the blue scarf returned carrying seedlings in paper cups. A man in a wheelchair came pushing a cart filled with lemon cookies he had baked himself. And the teenager with the scars? He brought a guitar. It was out of tune. The strings were rusted. But the sound it made? Honest. June didn't announce anything. She never did. She simply nodded to each person as they approached, like they'd always been part of this unspoken circle. A new umbrella had been added, deep maroon, with a small string of tiny gold lights wrapped around its handle. The corner glowed, even without sun. Elon took his seat beside June. "This is becoming something," he said. June sipped from her own paper cup. It already was. The guitarist started to play. No lyrics, just sound, soft, slow, like a lullaby made of second chances. One by one, people sat. Some stood. Some didn't speak at all. But no one left quickly. No one checked their phones. Time moved differently here. Then a man in his 50s approached with a box in his arms. He looked hesitant, like someone returning to a memory he wasn't sure he had permission to hold. "I was here once," he said. "Months ago. I didn't write anything. Didn't even drink. Just stood in the rain." June tilted her head, her expression gently curious. "I lost my daughter," he continued. "She was 7. She used to wear a yellow raincoat just like yours. I couldn't talk about her. Not anywhere. Not even with my wife. But after I left that day, I started writing. Every night. Not much. Just a sentence here or there." He opened the box. Inside were dozens of envelopes. Handwritten. Unsent. "I don't know where else to put them," he said. "But they started because of this place." June reached for one of the envelopes and read the first line. "Today, I missed how she used to hum to herself while brushing her teeth." She folded the letter carefully, then placed it beside the notebook and the locket and the pebble with the word braver. Elon watched the ritual unfold, stunned. "How do you know what to do?" he whispered to her. June shrugged. "I don't. But grief teaches us where to put things when the world forgets." And in that moment, the man who had conquered rockets, tunnels, and constellations felt small in the best way. He didn't need to solve anything here. He didn't need to lead. He just needed to be one more person who stayed when it rained. And so, when the guitarist started again, Elon closed his eyes and listened. He didn't remember the chords, but he remembered the sound of returning. The day felt wrong without rain. The air was too still, the clouds too clean, as if the world had forgotten how to ache out loud. And yet the stand remained. The notebooks were laid out. The umbrella opened like always, casting its lemon-colored shadow across a patch of sidewalk that had become sacred ground. Elon arrived quietly. He'd stopped announcing himself. He no longer approached with the curiosity of a visitor. He came now like you come home. June was humming softly, something without melody, just breath shaped like music. She handed him a cup without words. It was warm this time, like she knew the cool air might try to sneak into his bones. There were fewer people today, but the stillness was deeper. It wasn't silence from absence, it was reverence. A woman in a long beige coat stepped forward and placed a photograph on the table. It was laminated, bent at one corner. A boy, 5 years old, smiling through missing teeth. She whispered, "I brought him here once. I didn't know if he'd remember, but I remembered for both of us." June gently slid the photo beside a pressed flower someone had left a week before. "He's still here," she said. Another man sat on the curb, not near the stand but facing it. He didn't speak, didn't write, didn't drink. But the way he sat, hands on knees, back straight, eyes wide, it felt like prayer. Elon turned to June and asked, "Do you ever wish they knew who you really are?" She looked confused. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "That you're not just a girl with lemonade. That you're changing people." June smiled, slow and patient. "But that's the thing. I'm not. They are. I just gave them a place to remember how." And that's when he realized she didn't see herself as the center. She never had. She was the mirror, the one who held space, not the one who demanded attention inside it. That afternoon, a storm had been forecast, but it never came. Still, the sky darkened enough to make the street lamps blink on early. As the air thickened, a familiar voice echoed down the sidewalk. It was Jasper, the boy with the guitar, the one who once stood shaking under his hoodie, unsure if he deserved to take up space. But now he was singing. Not loud, not polished, but whole. His voice cracked as he strummed, and a line floated across the soft breeze. You don't need a map when someone stays with you. And just like that, June's eyes welled for the first time in days. She didn't wipe them. She let them fall. Elon stood beside her, hand on the corner of the table, grounding himself not in grief, but in witnessing. And somewhere above, the sky didn't cry, but the people did. And that was enough. Elon hadn't touched his phone in over an hour. For him, that was monumental. But in this place, under the soft hum of a guitar, the flickering yellow of that umbrella, and the steady, unbroken gaze of June, it felt like time itself had forgotten to keep score. The street lamp above buzzed faintly as the dusk settled deeper. A breeze rolled in, stirring the names on the notebook's open page. Elon stared at them, dozens, maybe hundreds. Each letter felt like a heartbeat. Each name, a tether to someone, somewhere, who had mattered. "You okay?" June asked gently, like someone offering both the question and its answer. Elon opened his mouth, closed it again. Then he sat down beside her and looked at the planter growing beside them. The rosemary had bloomed, delicate and stubborn. "I don't think I know what to do with all of this," he admitted. "With what?" she asked. He gestured toward everything, the stand, the people, the names. "With feeling this much." June didn't laugh. She didn't tell him it was okay. She just nodded, eyes steady. "That means you're doing it right." Elon looked out across the corner and saw what had slowly unfolded over the past few weeks. This was no longer an accident. It wasn't novelty. It wasn't even a story anymore. It was a rhythm. People came. People sat. People remembered. And they left a little lighter. A child arrived, holding a broken toy dinosaur. He didn't say a word, but placed it on the table next to the tin. When June asked why, the boy said, "It was my brother's. He's not here, but I think the dinosaur still wants to play." June didn't move it. She just smiled. Later, an older woman brought a shoebox full of old photographs. "I don't know where to keep them," she whispered, "but they don't feel right in a closet." So June made room. They stacked the box beside a cracked mug someone had left last week and the little stone with the word "Stay" still written in Elon's handwriting. Each object, each offering, carried more weight than all the inventions Elon had patented in his lifetime. Because this was an innovation. This was remembrance. This was meaning. And for the first time in years, he felt afraid, not of failure, but of missing it. What if I don't deserve this? Elon whispered. June blinked slowly. Then you're finally ready. He didn't ask what she meant. He just listened. The sky dimmed to deep lavender, and the last of the day's visitors drifted home. It was only them now. June, Elon, the notebook, the growing garden of ordinary grief and extraordinary grace. Can I come back tomorrow? He asked. You can come back whenever you remember why you came, she said, not unkindly. He nodded. And in that moment, Elon Musk, the man who once thought he needed to colonize planets to make life meaningful, understood something far quieter. That maybe, just maybe, the most important things on Earth can't be invented, only noticed. It started with a photo, not the first, not the one the photographer had shared months ago, but a new one. A quiet moment captured by a visitor from Oregon who'd traveled across the state just to sit beneath the yellow umbrella for an afternoon. She posted the image on her personal blog with 5 words. She let me miss him. No hashtags. No hashtags needed. It was reshared by a friend, then another. Then a teacher in Minnesota printed it out and pinned it to a corkboard in her classroom. A note below it read, "What would your stand look like?" Within a week, there were 7 imitation lemonade stands in different cities, each with its own flavor, its own language, its own version of a notebook. None of them tried to copy June. They didn't have to. They just understood the feeling. And that was enough. In Atlanta, a group of high school students set up a booth outside a hospital with a sign, "Tell us what you haven't said yet." In Montreal, someone left out a basket of paper cups and a notebook at a public bench. No one took credit for it, but pages kept filling up. In Tokyo, a street artist painted a wall-sized mural of a child in a yellow cap beneath an umbrella that covered half the block. The umbrella bore one phrase, written in 3 languages. "Come sit with me." Back in New York, June didn't say anything. Not even when Elon showed her photos from his tablet of other corners blooming with borrowed hope. She simply looked at the screen and said, "I'm glad the rain found other places to fall." Elon smiled. "Do you want to go see any of them?" June shook her head. "No, that's not my part." He tilted his head. "What is your part?" She sipped from her cup, then set it down beside a folded letter someone had left anonymously. "To stay." That word again. Stay. She didn't mean stand still. She didn't mean resist motion. She meant anchor. She meant belong. She meant that her role wasn't to go be everywhere. It was to be right here, so people had something to return to when the road got long. Later that day, a girl from the city came with her father. She was shy. She had a small scar on her forehead and a backpack full of books too big for her age. She asked June, "Do you have to be sad to come here?" June smiled and shook her head. "No, but if you are, that's okay too." The girl nodded, then opened her backpack and pulled out a drawing, crayons and lined paper. It showed a small house under a thundercloud, but the house had a glowing yellow umbrella over it. "I don't like when it storms," she said, "but I like the umbrella." June took the drawing and carefully placed it behind the donation tin. Elon crouched beside the girl and whispered, "That umbrella? That's what brave looks like." The girl beamed. And in that moment, Elon understood something else. It wasn't just about June. It wasn't just about the stand. It was about the way a single person's stillness could give a restless world permission to feel again. And maybe the future wasn't something to be designed or launched. Maybe, sometimes, it was something to be received. It was the quiet ones who surprised Elon the most. The ones who didn't wear their pain like a flag. The ones who smiled too quickly, laughed too loudly, stood just close enough to look present, but never quite arrived. They came in the later hours, usually when the sky was turning a dusty orange, when the air started to cool, and the sidewalk glistened faintly from earlier mist. That's when he saw her. She looked like she didn't belong there, not because she didn't care, but because she'd spent years pretending she didn't. Crisp blazer, heels she clearly didn't want to be wearing, hair tied too tightly to breathe. She walked to the notebook, paused, and stared at the cover without touching it. June watched quietly from her seat behind the lemonade stand. Elon was across the table, sipping from a paper cup, noticing everything. The woman finally spoke. "I used to cry in stairwells, between meetings. I didn't know what else to do with the sadness, so I packed it into the corners of my day." June said nothing, but her stillness was answer enough. "I lost a baby," the woman whispered. 16 weeks. I named her Mira, but I never said out loud to anyone. Not once. Until now." She touched the notebook like it might burn her, then wrote, "Mira, you mattered." When she finished, she took a deep breath, exhaled slowly, and turned away. But not before June handed her a cup and said, "She still does." The woman's shoulders shook once. Then she walked away without saying another word. Elon didn't speak. He couldn't. His chest felt heavy, but not in the way pain does. In the way truth does when it finally sits down beside you. Later that evening, a man arrived wearing a pressed Navy uniform, retired if Elon had to guess. He had a metal pin to his chest and a cane that clicked rhythmically against the sidewalk. He approached the stand, read the notebook, and said aloud, "I've spent 30 years pretending I didn't see what I saw." He didn't explain, didn't elaborate. He just pulled a small envelope from his coat, placed it gently beside the tin, and said, "I think this place forgives people who've forgotten how to cry." June reached for the envelope, then paused. "Would you like me to keep it safe?" The man's voice trembled. "Please." As the evening closed in, Elon sat with June, watching more people come, stay, and leave lighter than they'd arrived. He turned to her. "What happens when people stop coming?" June stared ahead. "They won't." "But what if they do?" he asked. She looked at him then, a calm certainty in her voice. "Then we wait. The rain always returns. So do they." And it was in that moment that Elon realized something not about June, but about himself. He hadn't been visiting this stand because of her. He had been returning to a part of himself he thought was lost. And June, this quiet, steady child with rain in her bones, had simply been holding the light until he could find the path back. The rain was gentle again, light enough to walk through, heavy enough to make you feel something. Elon arrived early like he always did lately, coffee in hand and notebook in his back pocket. The planter boxes looked healthy. The umbrellas were still standing. The bench was damp but empty. And June wasn't there. At first, he assumed she was running late. Maybe a flat tire on her bike. Maybe she forgot her crate. Maybe she just needed one morning for herself. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. People began to arrive, slowly, uncertainly, just like they always had. The man with the cane, the girl with the crayon drawings, a teacher from the nearby elementary school. All of them came expecting the same quiet grace they'd come to rely on. But the stand was empty. The notebook, however, was still there, left neatly on the table, wrapped in a dry cloth. A small sticky note sat on top in June's careful handwriting. "Just for today, you hold the space." Elon stared at it for a long time. He could have left, could have said, "It's not my place," could have waited for someone else to take the lead. But he didn't. He took off his coat and gently wiped down the bench. He opened the umbrella, poured 2 cups of lemonade from a thermos someone had left behind days ago, and placed them on the table like a ritual. Then he sat. People approached quietly. Some asked where June was. "She's not gone," Elon said. "She's just teaching us what it means to stay, even when she can't." It wasn't a crowd, but there were more than a few. And slowly the air changed. A woman sat beside Elon, silent. A child wrote a poem in the notebook. A teenager handed out lemon muffins, even though no one asked. Someone started singing. By noon, a new kind of silence had filled the corner. Not absence, but responsibility. As if the heart of the place hadn't vanished, it had simply moved into everyone who sat down. Elon hadn't expected it to hurt as much as it did. Not fear, not worry, just the ache of missing someone whose presence had become a kind of gravity in his life. That night, he sat at the cabin, pen in hand, unable to write. So instead, he returned to the corner. Alone now after everyone else had gone. The stand was quiet again. The lights from the nearby street lamps flickered in puddles. And then, from the bench, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. Underneath the planter box, written in chalk so faint it almost disappeared into the concrete. If you're reading this, thank you for staying. His chest tightened. He didn't know when she'd written it. Maybe last week, maybe the very beginning. But it didn't matter, because the message was for anyone who needed to know they were part of this now. And he was. They all were. The next day, the sun came out. Not in a shy, reluctant way, but fully, boldly. The kind of sunlight that dries the sidewalks and makes the city smell like warm stone and honeysuckle. Elon walked the path to the corner with a steady rhythm, eyes scanning for the yellow umbrella. This time she was there. But something about her was different. June sat without the crate. No notebook, no lemonade, no stand. Just her on the curb, knees drawn in, palms resting flat on the concrete. Her eyes weren't distant, they were present. Deeply, quietly, like she was listening for something underground. Elon sat next to her, without saying a word. After a few minutes, she looked at him and whispered, "She's gone." He didn't have to ask who. He already knew. "My mom," June continued. "She passed last night. Peacefully. The nurse said she smiled right before, like she knew I was okay." Elon didn't reach for her hand. He didn't offer a platitude. He just stayed. That was all she needed. A moment passed, then another. Finally, June reached into the pocket of her coat and pulled out a tiny seed. Round, pale, smooth. She used to keep it in her wallet, June said. Said it came from the lemon tree in her grandmother's backyard. "I never planted it." She stood, walked to the planter beside the bench, and knelt. Elon watched in silence as she pressed the seed into the soil, covered it with trembling fingers, and sat back down. "I don't know if it'll grow," she said. Elon looked at her. "Maybe it already has." That day, the stand remained closed, but the bench wasn't empty. People still came, some to sit, some to leave flowers. One woman brought a thermos of lemonade and poured 2 cups, placing one where June used to sit and sipping from the other with tears in her eyes. No one said the word funeral. No one spoke of endings. They just sat in that sacred space and allowed the world to turn slowly again. Later, as the sky faded into soft gold, June placed a new sign in the middle of the table. It read, "The stand is resting, but you can still stay." And beside it, the notebook reappeared, this time with a new prompt at the top of the page. "What do you want to grow now?" Elon opened the page and wrote, "Stillness, so it can echo." He didn't need to write more, because in that single word, everything lived. That evening, as the streetlights buzzed and the sidewalk dried, Elon stood in front of the tiny mound of soil where June had placed the seed. He didn't pray. He didn't predict. He just waited. And in the silence, he swore he could feel it. Something beginning again. The lemon tree didn't sprout right away. Of course it didn't. But that didn't stop people from checking. Each day, someone would lean down beside the planter box, run their fingers across the soil, maybe whisper something. Not a request. Not even hope. Just presence. Elon kept coming back. Not because he felt obligated, but because something in him had shifted. Something that didn't need applause or explanation. He no longer came with notebooks, or questions, or plans. He came to sit, to notice, to remember. The corner didn't always have lemonade now. Some days, the stand remained folded up, quietly resting against the bench. But the notebook was always there, and people kept writing. Some entries were just names. Some were single words like begin, stay, or home. Others spilled across pages, letters, confessions, prayers. A traveling musician left a loop pedal and recorded ambient chords for people to sit with while they wrote. A local artist painted a mural across the wall behind the planter. It showed a child beneath a yellow umbrella, surrounded by silhouettes of people sitting, holding cups of light. and the little sign in front of the soil remained unchanged. What do you want to grow now? One day, Elon brought his own seed. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a real lemon seed from a tree he'd found near an old trail in California. He pressed it into the soil beside June's, added a pebble with the word "begin" carved into it, and stood in silence as the wind passed between the buildings. June stood beside him. She didn't speak, but she smiled just once. They didn't need to say goodbye. There was nothing ending, because the corner had stopped being a place. It had become a language of staying, of seeing, of allowing things to grow in places most people rush past. A week later, Elon returned to the cabin one final time. He sat on the back steps with the sunset behind him and recorded a short video on his phone. Not a corporate message, just his voice. He said, "Sometimes the future isn't found in invention. Sometimes it's found in noticing, in sitting beside someone in the rain and handing them a paper cup when the world forgets their name." He paused, looking off to the sky. Her name is June. She sells lemonade when it rains. But what she's really offering is a place to remember, a place to return to, a reason to stay. Then he smiled, and for the first time in the entire journey, his voice cracked a little. So if this story stayed with you, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. Let's see how far this stand reaches. He ended with a soft laugh. And if you felt something, anything at all, you're not alone. We're still here. And the rain, when it comes again, might just bring someone like June to your corner of the world too. He looked at the camera, eyes warm. Take care of each other. Then he pressed stop and let the quiet settle in. Not the kind that means it's over, the kind that means it mattered. If this story moved you, we'd be honored if you'd subscribe to the channel. Not for numbers, not for reach. Let us know in the comments. Where in the world are you watching from? Let's build this map of quiet courage, one city at a time. Globe showing Americas. And remember, you don't have to wait for the rain to show up. Sometimes you are the umbrella.